So we've got it. We've been informed. Thank you. Gary, if you don't mind, we have one slide just to share some local business, and then we'll turn it over. I don't know if Karen is going to introduce you today. Karen, am I turning it to you, or am I just going straight to Gary?
You're just going straight to Gary.
Okay, thanks, Karen. You can flip this slide. Thank you. We just have a few meetings coming up that we wanted to share. Of course, May 16th and 17th. So next week, we've got the 2 council sessions open and closed. I will be on holiday next week. Julie, the wonderful, will be manning the helm, personing the helm while I'm gone. Also next week is the second NIH virtual town hall on diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. So as you know, they just released the NIH-wide strategic plan for DEIA. I was deeply involved in developing that and helped on one of the chapters as well. So it's kind of neat to see that out. So that'll be good. If you have questions, I think they may have the deadline might be closed, but if not, you can ask when you're there. There's an all hands on Tuesday, the May 23rd from 12 to 1. And this is going to be about a lot of the stuff that we've been working on related to the White House and congressional issues. So you may see someone you know or two in that. And then we've rescheduled our June full staff to 11 to noon on June 6th. And this is, we moved the date so that we could get Shelley. So Shelley and Lauren are going to come and talk to us sort of about the big picture about all of the DEIA activities that are going on. And we'll have an opportunity to share some of the stuff we've been doing in OSPPC, some ideas about what we'd like to be doing, and just to sort of hear the picture sort of coming together. So we heard everyone's interest in this, and we wanted to sort of get it from the people who are leading it. So we're excited about that. And that is all we have on here today. And on that note, we are again fortunate to have with us Gary Morin, who is here to talk to us some more about 508 compliance. We've been hearing a lot about this across NIH channels. So Gary, I shall turn it over to you, and thank you again for joining us. It's great to see you again.
Great to be here. Let's see if I will share my screen and share the PowerPoint. And great, you should all be seeing my PowerPoint. And we're sharing. Good. Thank you again for having me back this afternoon. I really enjoyed being with you a few weeks ago and talking about alternative text. That's kind of one of my 2 areas of interest, that and video accessibility. And I think hopefully today we'll have a little bit of time also to talk about meeting and video accessibility. So the things we're going to cover today are, we'll do an alternative text refresher. We just got 2 images that we're going to look at. One is pretty complicated, and hopefully I've done it justice. We're then going to move into Microsoft Office files, and I'll be sure to continue to tell you where I got the material so that you can go back and study it more in depth as you have time. I've picked out, I think, what the highlights are for, in particular, Microsoft Office and Microsoft Word. We'll talk a few minutes about assistive technology. And as I say, depending on how time goes, we'll address webinar accessibility and meeting accessibility. Do feel free to put in the chat any questions you have. And I think some amongst you will be following the chat and raising questions. If they're critical at the moment, if you just have such a hot burning question, please do ask right away. Or we can hold it until the end. If you raise a question, I know I'm going to get to it later. I'll just let you know. We'll get to that. Are there any questions that you have started kind of out of the gate that you want me to raise this afternoon? Please go on mic. I don't have the chat. I can check the chat certainly. But do let me know if there's anything that you would like me to raise. Okay, so I've got my chat in another window, so I should be good with that. But let's just take a moment or two to review our alternative text from last time. Remember, we always want to consider what the image is, what the purpose is, what the context is. you don't want to rely on Microsoft Office's alternative text auto generator. Some people recommend that you just turn it off because it gives such bad results. I like to kind of encourage people to leave it turned on, because when you look at those bad results, it kind of forces you in the moment to say, aha, what was it that I was trying to convey? What is the purpose of this image? Why do I have it? Why have I taken up screen space or document space? What is so important about this image that I've included it, that I need to convey it to a person who's blind or vision impaired, or even a person who's sighted, but perhaps has a print disability and is using a screen reader? And we will certainly spend a few minutes towards the end on the benefits of screen readers. So this is the image that's been presented. Hopefully I've done it some justice. I'm not a researcher. What I've done is taken the explanation of it and broken it apart into two sections where we talk about the image on the left. And it kind of reads a little weird. I'm not sure how that first sentence would run. You know, on the left and right views of the brain, and there may be more technical terms for the left and right view that we'd want to substitute. But I kept it very technical because the audience is researchers, scientists. And so, as always, we want to keep the level of the alternative text at the level of the audience. If it takes an MD, PhD to understand it, then that blind reader has to be an MD, PhD. So it's never about lowering the quality or lowering the academic credibility. It's just about making it available to a wider audience, but not a less qualified audience. Persons have to be qualified. So it is a little bit lengthy, and it's not that many sentences. It's actually only 4 sentences, but it is about 100 words. I think that's what the count was. We've heard over the years different numbers of words or characters. My response to that is it's got to be as long as necessary and as short as possible, or conversely, as short as possible, but as long as necessary. We typically say 2 to 3 sentences. 4 sentences, it's not going to break the bank. I think what I would recommend for the person who is actually using this image is to take my draft and then kind of tweak it to, did I condense it correctly? I made it into more active sentence structure. The verbs are more active than passive. We're seeing this, we're presenting that. This data is compared with that data. It doesn't go into the colors, that would take it much longer, but the colors are representative. As always, you can simply put in a footnote. For further details, see the downloadable CSV file or the Excel file, or in this case, it's actually linked to the article. So if this were a presentation, here's a summary of my presentation, here's a summary of my data. Please see the link to get the full context for the full story. So you just really want to give a very good flavor of the content of the image without going into too far detail. This is a really nice set of infographics. And as an alternative text for this, in fact, it's linked to where those 6 downloadable infographics are. And I'd really encourage you to take a look at them. They're really very nicely designed images from the UK government on how to optimize your designs. And this is the thing about Section 508. On the one hand, we're told if you conform with the standards, if you follow the rules, it will be accessible. The rules, the accessibility standards were designed to make the content accessible. You don't need to test with assistive technology. You don't need to worry about screen readers or screen magnifiers. I think they work both hand in hand. You do want to follow the standards and then say, okay, just as with a recipe. I followed the recipe. Why didn't it come out accessible? It didn't come out good. Well, maybe the temperature of the oven was different, or the oven you're used to working with is not the one you used, or the pans were different. You used a generic brand instead of the name brand ingredients. So you always have to still test it out and say, well, there's going to be variation, even if we follow the rules exactly from one time to the next. You always work from the larger to the smaller. This is a set of 6 infographics. The infographics are about accessibility for web design. The 6 different types of accessibility are for people who are blind, people who are vision impaired, people who are deaf and hard of hearing. So again, what's the global concept? And then narrow it down within those 2 or 3 sentences. So moving on to talking about Microsoft Office, there's a lot of websites out there. There are a lot of training materials out there. What I've tried to do is just give a highlight. A lot of what I've used today is from the Defense Acquisition University. They have a training module on Microsoft PowerPoint, Word, Excel, on PDF files, and on multimedia. So I've taken some of the more key, I think, outstanding features that I wanted to share with you today. And much of the images in this presentation then are linked back to where that source material came from. What I would encourage you all to do is look at your schedules. This is an imposition I'm going to suggest. Block out 10 or 15 minutes once a week, a quarter of an hour, half an hour, and just set it aside for your own training development on accessibility. Many of the modules out there, such as at section508.gov, the Word material or the PowerPoint material is an hour long, but they're designed in 10-minute segments. So every week, just take a look at a different segment. Take a look at the DAU material, Defense Acquisition University. Take it in bites, because it really is a lot. There are a lot of references, and some of them are consistent, and some of them conflict with one another. Pick one, and just as your time permits, put everything else aside, and maybe have a Word document ready or a PowerPoint document at the ready so that you can start to actually apply those skills. So we're just going to go through, I think there's about 10 different highlighted issues or topics that really will make it more usable for a person with a disability, make it more compatible with assistive technology. These are the features of Word or PowerPoint that assistive technology is looking for. So that if you follow these rules, not only does it conform with the rules, the standards, it actually will be usable for a person with a disability. So you want to use, in Word, use the headings. They're right at the top. You've probably all seen them. They really do make a difference. It's that chapter and verse organization of a document. This is what people who are blind and vision impaired are looking for so they can navigate, rather than having to read an entire 100-page document. What we often do historically, and we've all done it, is just use bold and underlined and change the font size. Well, I'll just make this bold and 16 point, and it'll look like a chapter heading. That doesn't mean anything to somebody who's using assistive technology. They're just going to hear text after text after text. By actually giving it structure, it will tell the person who's blind or vision impaired, this is a header, this is a chapter heading, this is a subheading, this is a verse, and really makes it much easier, which then leads into creating tables of contents. Any document 9 pages or longer, and this is an HHS rule for 508, is required to have a table of contents. And then in PDF, it's actually referred to as a bookmark rather than table of contents. Adobe had to make it difficult and different. Microsoft Word allows up to 4 levels. You can't have a level 2 without a level 1. You can't have a level 4 without a level 3, but you can have as many of the subheadings as you want, of course. But this is what a screen reader, the software that people who are blind or vision impaired use to navigate documents. And it would also then convert to web design into PDF files. They're going to navigate through looking for what is the heading, what is the subheading. These are critical for navigation. Also, as somebody who uses Dragon Naturally Speaking, an assistive technology that's speech recognition, so that I can do my dictation, my typing without touching the keyboard or without touching the mouse, because I could navigate by saying, jump to heading 2, jump to heading 3. So I could navigate it by voice if I'm dexterity impaired. I can navigate it by keyboard if I'm blind or vision impaired. Really key. think we're probably better at this one. And I think that if you put in dots, bullets, Microsoft is smart enough now that it will figure it out and it'll force it into bulleted numbers, ordered lists and unordered lists. But again, software with that's assistive technology will be looking to jump from one bullet to the next bullet to the next. So that again, there's structure. It's not just a random list, it's an organized list. It may be ordered with numbers or unordered with bullets, but there's a foundation to it. And so I can command my computer to jump to bullet 2, jump to bullet 6. A blind person would be able to tab down and it follows in order. I've been noticing with a lot of the institutes, NCI included, staff like to put in creative bullets. They're actually images, check marks, X's, big red X's or big green check marks as substitute bullets. And they're images and you can add alternative text to them. I'm not sure yet. I have to do some more research on whether that's a legitimate use of bullets and how that interferes or supports assistive technology. So the jury of me, one, is out on that. As best as you can, just use those bulleted lists, the sublists, and you're good to go at supporting anyone who's using assistive technology. Again, from a vision impairment perspective or a dexterity perspective. This one, really critical. PowerPoint layouts. Use the layouts that are provided by Microsoft Office or Google Slides, if that's the applications you use in your office. Don't take a blank slide and then use text boxes. Screen reader software really has a difficult time navigating those text boxes that are dropped in randomly. These are designed with accessibility in mind. Many institutes, and I presume yours as well, has a standard set of branded, approved, NIMH branded, approved layouts. Stick with that. Those are built with accessibility in mind. There's enough variety of the section headers, the titles and content, the different layouts that you can typically find one that will work for you. And remember, every slide has to have a heading. And when you run the accessibility checker, it will look for it and it will force you, or it will fail, to put in a title header. You can put in invisible ones in the background so that it still has the structure, even though it's not visible to the sighted person. Hyperlinks. Click here means not a thing to a person who's blind or vision impaired. Click this for more information. We all look for links. They're going to be those highlighted or underlined phrases. You may need to revise your paragraph. I want you to visit X for more information rather than click here for more information. Use it to support your narrative. Let the users know where it's going to take them. You don't want just a raw URL because that'll be read letter by letter to a screen reader user. So a blind person is going to have to listen to each and every letter, HTTP://. Just use a creative phrase that lets the person know where they're going. And that way, everyone is going to be unique. The more links you have on a page, the more confusing, the less useful click here is. It does make, again, it takes a little bit of investment in time up front, but it's more useful. And I think it's a better experience for everybody. We've talked about alternative text. Think about the bigger picture. What's the general vision of the picture, and then zoom in your description. It's a laboratory in which we see two people working. What's critical, what's not critical. If it's not important, don't mention it. For those images that are very in-depth, like the brain image earlier on, most definitely link to where you can explain it better. Don't undermine or sabotage the clarity just to cram it in, all of the content, into 2 slides, or I'm sorry, into 2 sentences. Keep it clean and simple. And then if there is that much more information, you can either link the image to a long description on another page, to a footnote. If it's a PowerPoint file, mention this is an image of two scientists. For further information about their research, see the notes field. Cheat and tell the blind user where to find more information. Speak to your audience. Completely appropriate. If you've got an image that you're going to be providing a caption for so that everybody has to see, everybody will read the caption, think about how the two work together. The alternative text should not be redundant so that the blind person hears the same thing twice. What does everybody need to hear? Put that into the caption. And that's quite easy in Microsoft Word. You can use the right click on it and add a caption. And then what is it that the blind person individually needs that you're going to put into the alternative text? This one's a little tricky. And this one is used a lot, or this approach of putting a lot of images into one slide. Various pieces of lab equipment, lots of different individuals, different cities as part of a map. If you're talking about demographics of where one disease is versus another, or where one population is versus another. While you could give this slide 5 different alternative texts, one for each image, the screen reader will get confused and it doesn't know if there's meant to be a specific order. So there's 2 ways around this. In in Office PowerPoint, you can actually select all 5 images and paste them together as a group and then give it one alternative text, or pull up a third-party software such as Snip and Sketch, take a, euphemistically speaking, photograph of those 5 images, and then delete 5 separate images and paste in that new one photo. And then you just put in one alternative text. This is a group shot of 5 sets of evil characters in a television show, rather than character 1, alternative text 1, character 2, and alternative text 2. Group them together, and give it one group alternative text. In this image, we see 5 groups of individuals. Much easier. It does take a little bit of practice using that Snip and Sketch and pasting it in. I find that easier, though, than trying to use the Microsoft Office PowerPoint group feature. I never get it quite right. I'm not sure if I'm doing something wrong or if it's an unsteady hand on the mouse. But there is a select all, and perhaps we'll have a chance to go out of presentation mode and actually try to do it together ourselves this afternoon. Color. The first and last word on color is don't avoid it. That is perfectly appropriate, such as we saw in that image earlier of the brain scans. Use color, just don't rely only on color. And so consider colorblind issues, which colors to use and which colors not to use, and then use added labels. In this case, the added labels are good button, bad button. You know, if you've got a training module on the screen and there's a forward button and a back button, your forward button might be green, but it's also then labeled next, whereas the back button is red and it's labeled back. Redundancy. 508 is always about redundancy. If I can't see it, can I hear it? If I can't type it, can I speak it? So different options for output, different options for input. It doesn't rely on any one sense. Touch, feel, type, hear. And along with that is just good, strong contrast. And this is one feature of a document that the Microsoft Accessibility Checker does not check for. So I would work with Karen on this one, find out what she uses for. There are a number of eyedropper type tools out there where you can actually plug in the just as we have here, the foreground color and the background color, and it will mathematically check the contrast for you. There are 2 different standards for contrast, depending on the size of the font.
Skip it.
Is there a question? Yep. Not sure if I heard something. So this is one part that the accessibility will not check, but there are some very easy to use tools out there, such as this, plugging in the numbers, or some eyedropper tools where you actually click and drag an eyedropper and extract the two different colors, the foreground and the background, and it'll tell you how well they compare. Fonts. I think this probably most people are pretty good with. This is a new font on the first sentence, and it's called Open Sans. It's from Google Docs, but it works in Microsoft. I found that when I copied it over, it was retained and recognized by the PowerPoint. It's a nice, clean font. It's similar to the other sans serif fonts, meaning the ones that don't have calligraphy swirls. Oh, okay, no problem. Nice and clean, good, strong, readability, legibility. There's, I think this is the one that was designed to actually then also have, they've done some research on font design. Researchers have found by certain letters, of course, look alike, whether it's the B and the P, the D and the D, Q, B, D, Q, and P. And that there's some slight differences, that just the slight differences between, say, a Q and a G, or the B and the D, really makes a difference in the legibility and the readability. Left justified, if I haven't said that before, and I think I'll say it again, as often as possible, left justify everything. You don't want to, full justification adds rivers of white throughout the text. It's very difficult to follow for somebody who is partially sighted or vision impaired. You really want all the and it through kerning, K-E-R-N-I-N-G, where various amounts of white space are added in between the letters to spread them out across the page. It kind of breaks the words apart. So by leaving it left justified, every word has the same amount of white space between the letters, and it's consistent. This one, keeping paragraphs short, it's really going to depend on, and I think this probably supports plain language and content for the public. It may not work for academic content or content for professionals. So use it as appropriate, depending on your audience. The image on the right, this is one that's really key. Now, I've given this the measurements that I use my own, what makes it consistent. Whatever your style is, just be consistent throughout the PowerPoint slide or throughout the Word document. That the indent is always the same from paragraph to paragraph. The spacing between paragraphs is always the same. Really critical to have a uniform content so that the person who's reading it, whether they're using assistive technology or just using the built-in features of Microsoft Office and enlarging it or changing the colors to really facilitate their being able to focus on the content and not focus on the spacing or being distracted by different paragraph spacing. So the Microsoft Accessibility Checker, always run it. You can actually set Word and PowerPoint to run it as you're developing your document. You don't have to wait until it's done. Click on File Info and then check for accessibility under Check Issues. This will work with any document from Office 2013 and above. If you're using an older document, you're reviving an older document, you just need to upgrade it, resave it as a current Office 365 file, Office 2016, or Word 2016, and then it will be compatible. And then you can run the accessibility checker. One of the questions that I was asked to bring to attention this afternoon is the accessibility checker enough? Because it may or may not reach the full Section 508 standards if you compared. Now, I've gotten mixed messages on this from the 508 community. For most internal documents, I would say that the accessibility checker, other than things like the color contrast, this probably reaches 85% of the Section 508 standards. because Microsoft as a company isn't obligated to fully comply with Section 508. They're a private industry. It's up to the federal government to comply. But they have provided the checkers to make very good accessible documents that for the wider public, whether you're federal or not. So most of us, I think, in the 508 community, certainly everybody recommends using this. The levels of acceptance are pretty high in terms of, yeah, if you use the accessibility checker and fix everything that it tells you to, fix the errors, fix the warnings, utilize the tips, you will have a good accessible document. Of course, it can't tell you how good the alternative text is. That you have to go in and manually write, but it will tell you if there is an alt text or not there. I would say if it's a document going out under an executive's signature, or it's going out on the front website, it's going out under your director's name, definitely use the HHS checklist and bring it up to that next level. Content on your internet, and this is not to downplay that employees should have, because 508 does apply both to members of the public and employees, you have to pick and choose your time, how much time you're going to invest. If it's a working document, absolutely build that accessibility into it. And of course, none of us really know, all of our colleagues, what disabilities they may or may not have. So we shouldn't assume that it doesn't have to be accessible at all until it's published. Certainly should be during the development stage. In a sense, pick your battles. Decide where to invest your time. And again, with the PowerPoint, Microsoft Accessibility Checker, always run it at the end, but ideally run it through the development process of your document. Info. This image, I'm not sure why the red arrow is where it is. It's actually under info, check for issues, check accessibility. Have your IT staff reconfigure your PowerPoint, your standalone applications, so that it's a default running when you start your application. And I think you can even go in yourself without the administrator doing it for you. Check it in the beginning, check it halfway through, check it again at the end. I want to pause for a moment because that's all the highlights I wanted to bring to your attention this afternoon for Microsoft Office. Do we have any questions at this point? Okay. So next is, let's take a few minutes to talk about assistive technology, which is a huge field of study. And each part of this afternoon, we could spend an hour on. But I'll just give you a taste. And I'll give you two websites. What I'll do is after our session this afternoon is I'll go back and do some editing on the PowerPoint slides, make sure all of these links are in there. Two really good websites to be aware of. The first one is CAP, the Computer Electronic Assistance Program, cap.mil. They're a federal program out of the Department of Defense. They used to provide to us, and that changed about 2-3 years ago, where they no longer support civilian agencies. They will provide support to civilian employees and agencies for evaluation. If you are an employee with a disability, or you're developing a disability, or you're hiring an employee with a disability, they used to actually provide the assistive technology. They no longer do that for civilian agencies, but their lab is open. You can go over there as a federal employee, and they've got rooms and rooms full of all kinds of assistive technology. So different types of keyboards, different size monitors, different types of screen readers for the blind, or screen magnifiers for persons with vision loss. And you can try them out. Back in the day, what would happen is you could then go online, and after you tried it all out, you went online, you filled in the form and submitted a request. We can't do that anymore, but we're certainly welcome to go over and figure out what's the best assistive technology for you as an individual. Because what you might want is going to be different than what another individual wants. It may be dependent on what it has to be compatible with for the other technology used to do your job. Yep. So screen readers are for persons who are blind or have very low vision. It's also used by persons with cognitive disabilities or print disabilities and prefer to listen to their content. You could also have, say, a smartphone version of it and just listen to your books on tape. You could download a PDF file and and if it's formatted correctly, or a Word document, you could then listen to your office documents, your work-related documents on your smartphone while driving home or taking the metro on your commute, if you so choose to listen to work while you're commuting. But it does read everything out loud, top to bottom, left to right. When it hits an image, it will tell you image, and then it reads your alternative text. It tells the blind person the structure of the page. You're at heading 1. A blind person can actually then switch and say, just read all the headings to me. I'll read out the table structure or the page structure to me. And it essentially reads the table of contents. And then the blind person would know how to tab through and jump to chapter 7, chapter 10, rather than listening through the whole page to get to where they want to go. So again, this is one of those infographics from the UK government. And on this slide, it's actually, the link is right in the notes field. So again, earlier I mentioned there's that quandary between, if I follow the rules for accessibility, I shouldn't have to test for assistive technology compatibility. It never hurts to have it tested with assistive technology when you're designing new graphics, new images, new web pages. I would only suggest that you don't do it yourself if you're not a native user of that assistive technology. If you dabble in assistive technology, you're not going to get a true experience of what a blind person actually experiences. You'd be better off finding the funds and contracting it out to professional blind people, professional vision impaired people who know how to use their assistive technology and can help isolate where the improvements need to be. Screen magnifiers are for persons with some vision. They can change the colors, they can change the fonts, they can magnify it up to 1,000%. This is really nice for if you have a color loss, color vision loss, you can change the foreground and the background, black on yellow, yellow on black, blue on green, whatever the colors are to your heart's delight. Really allows persons who are vision impaired to customize it, and perhaps customize it throughout the day. As we age, as we lose our vision, we may have more energy and more ability in the morning, or we may have better lighting in the morning. And in the afternoon, our vision is more tired, the lighting changes. We can change the colors on a screen easier, and that's left to the individual by their screen readers or screen magnifying software. I did not put up one for speech recognition software. I don't have a nice graphic for that. But again, for the most part, if you follow the rules for screen reader capability or compatibility, it will, for the most part, work for people with dexterity impairments and speech recognition software. Not 100%, there are some differences, but that's for another day where it gets more detailed and technical. This last, and we have until 3 o'clock, is that correct? And I will stop, of course, about 10 hours so that we can actually then go off the PowerPoint slides and just chat. I'm just going to run through this. This is a really nice piece that I put together. I think it's gone over pretty well on meeting accessibility. So moving away from how to create documents that are accessible is, now that your documents are accessible, your PowerPoint files, your Word files, how do I present them in a meeting? These were some questions that were presented to me by one of the NCI offices. Do our meeting documents all have to be 5-way conformant? At what point do our meetings rise to the level of having to be 5-way conformant? The long and short of that one is, if it's a federally conducted program, your meetings have to be accessible. Some things must be designed ahead of time. Other things are provided upon request as a reasonable accommodation. And we all have some flexibility around that. What's mandated to be accessible by design, and then what can I wait for? upon request. Do I always have to provide interpreters and captioning? Do all of the documents have to be accessible? What's by design and what's by default, by request? So what's nice to know is that the different platforms we have, Teams, WebEx, and Zoom, they're all accessible. So we have procured accessible software, telecommunications platforms or meeting collaboration platforms. Whether they officially meet the Section 5-way conformance standards and they'll claim to, is that we know that they're functionally very accessible. People who are blind are able to navigate them and participate in meetings with screen readers, screen magnifiers. I could turn my Dragon Actually Speaking on and navigate through a meeting, giving the commands. Now, if I were commanding the slides while presenting to you, that gets a little awkward. You'd be hearing me say, click next slide. It gets a little tedious for you to listen to if I were the speaker and talking my presentation as well as using my assistive technology. It's just kind of a reality that we would have to live around. What's nice about these platforms is they all support interpreters and CART, computer-assisted real-time transcription. So the last time we met, we actually had professional captioners providing the captioning, and that was integrated. Today we're using Zoom, the auto captioning feature in the collaboration platform. For meetings like this, where it's a very small group, or if it's a one-on-one, face-to-face, generally speaking, sometimes auto captioning is sufficient. But you should always leave it up to, if a deaf or hard of hearing person asks for it, then provide professional captioning. And the NIH has a centralized program, so there's really no reason not to, and to make anybody rely on auto captioning. And you're really doing everybody an injustice, because auto captioning, as good as it is, will never get everybody's accent. We'll miss a lot of the technical information. And you want to hold your colleagues and your employees accountable for the content you're presenting. Make sure the captioning conveys that. Provide materials ahead of time to the captioner, to an interpreter. If we need an interpreter today, they can be put in, they can be pinned or spotlighted in the different collaboration platforms. So again, the software is accessible. The software, these platforms support the inclusion of interpreters and real-time captioning. So they are, to the best of our knowledge, if somebody said, are they compliant with the law? Are they officially conformant? I don't know if we could say yes or no. They're more than usable and accessible, usable by and accessible to persons with disabilities. And so that's a really nice feature. Whenever you're announcing a meeting, you want to let people know up front, this meeting will be interpreted, or this meeting will have captioning. For other reasonable accommodations, please contact, and then you fill in the name and contact information. These are links to the vendors' websites on the accessibility features. So now what would make it inaccessible is if I had images without alternative text, or if I embedded a video that did not have captioning. So again, the environments are fully accessible. Presumably they are 5-way conformant. I could undermine that by putting inaccessible content into it. So that's something to keep in mind. All of your documents have to be conformant. They're supposed to be conformant. So whether they're for a meeting or for a website or for collaboration in your office, then they need to be compliant or conformant with standards. You don't need to provide captioning or interpreters unless it's requested. The only time within the NIH that interpreters are provided pretty much by default are for Institute town hall meetings. Back early in the day, I first came on to the NIH as an interpreter, and we always provided interpreters for every open event. And you can just imagine, it just wasn't feasible or sustainable. There simply aren't enough interpreters around to go around. So priority is anytime a deaf or hard of hearing person asks for them. If we know a deaf person is going to be there, then we provide an interpreter. Otherwise, it's upon a request. Really, since COVID hit, that we have said, you know what, things are critical when we have a town hall meeting. We're just going to provide interpreters by default. So if it's an agency director or institute director or upper senior leadership, we will make those fully accessible. Much better use of resources. So supply and demand for interpreters. If it's a webinar open for the public, and this is a glitch because we no longer have the funding, centralized funding for it, is any meeting that's open to the public under HHS policy really is supposed to be captioned in real time based on the World Wide Web, the WCAG, World Wide Web Consortium Accessibility Guidelines. And HHS's policy that integrates those guidelines. It states all webinars, all virtual events are supposed to be captioned. Up until 2 years ago, we had a centrally funded service. That service was decommissioned by GSA. NIH hasn't replaced it yet. So this is something we as a community need to encourage the NIH Office of the Director and CIT perhaps to re-implement so that we can ensure that all of our public events are captioned. Because in those events, we have less control over who's attending. If it's an internal event with employees, we know who they are. We can advertise and give them a point of contact. If you require reasonable accommodations, just let us know. We will provide it, but we don't provide it unless you tell us to provide it. Things open to the public are a little bit more vague as to who's attending. So this is something in development, a process. This is all of the documents for internal that must be conformant, and that's intranet sites, because there was a question up until 2017 as to whether everything on our intranets had to be conformant and accessible. So there are some loopholes in this. Everything on the internet must be conformant. Everything on the intranet mostly has to be conformant. And how you interpret these different bullets is open to interpretation. This is just some boilerplate language, and it's one of the documents I'll send along as an attachment later. It's just some boilerplate language on how to promote meeting accessibility. The first bullet is, we're not providing anything by default. But if you're an individual with disability, just let us know and we'll provide it. The second one, this Microsoft Teams or Zoom meeting or what have you, WebEx, will be provided with captioning. If you need anything else, let us know. And then the third option is kind of that town hall level of, and maybe they really should just be bullets rather than ordered lists of 1, 2, 3. We are providing captioning and interpreting. Again, for anything else, just let us know. Quite often what people who are blind or vision impaired need is the PowerPoint slides ahead of time so they can listen to the slides in advance and then listen to your presentation, rather than trying to listen to the slides and the presentation simultaneously, each in a different ear. And that's why it's important to provide make sure that your PowerPoint slides are accessible in advance, that they're conformant, so that you can then provide them to anybody who needs them. Rachel, when using a screen reader to access a PowerPoint presentation, does the screen reader read the contents of the notes? Yes. If so, and how and when does it read the notes? I believe it with screen readers, you can toggle between the on-screen slides. You'd probably go into edit mode rather than in PowerPoint presentation mode. And then you can toggle between the fields or between the layout content and the notes content. There's one of the applications. Let me just jump back real quick, and then we're going to wrap up. Oh, I didn't put a list of the different ones. JAWS is quite expensive. It's about $1,500 a copy. NVDA is free. It's crowdsourced, and it was actually developed by 2 blind university students in Australia who couldn't afford $1,500 for JAWS. So I encourage you to download it. If you can, contribute to their crowdsourcing. But it's it's very competitive with with JAWS. It's really gaining market share amongst the blind community. So that might be something worth downloading and installing and testing it out just to get that experience. Let's see. I'm going to go out of slide mode and go stop sharing, go back on camera so that we can just spend the last 9-10 minutes by responding to questions. So I'm going to send a document afterwards that will have the links to the different assistive technology products. CAP is one of the resources I recommend getting to know. The Job Accommodation Network, which I believe is jan.wvu.edu. It's at West Virginia University, and I'll verify that. They are a Department of Labor funded program to support employers across the country. And they have great plain language descriptions or articles on various assistive technology. The other one that's great, and they'll provide demonstrations, is the Maryland Technology Accessibility Program. Every state has a TAP program, Technology Accessibility Program. Again, it's federally driven. And they will provide either in person if you go to Baltimore, or they will do a virtual walkthrough of their assistive technology lab and really demonstrate all of the different types of technology so that you get to see them in action. What can I respond to? The 15 people on camera, I'd love to answer your questions. Silence?
Eliza's got her hand up, and then Samantha.
Okay.
Thanks so much for that overview, Gary. I apologize if I missed this earlier in the presentation, but I just wanted to clarify. So you mentioned that left justification is always preferred on slides. Are there also considerations around the positioning of text boxes when using a screen reader? Like, for example, a lot of times people like to mix things up in their slides and have text on the left with images on the right, and then kind of mix it up a few slides later and have images on the left and text on the right. Does that get complicated for a screen reader to handle?
No. So yes, the text itself should be left justified in a Word document or in a PowerPoint slide. But whether you use left and right or right and left for the images and the text, no, as long as you follow the formatting so that whether the text is on the right box, the left box, your image has an alt text and your text is left justified and cleanly formatted, not at all. Not that I've ever heard. And who was it that also was it? There was Samantha.
It was Samantha. Hi, thanks, Gary. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So yeah, thank you for this overview. This and the alt text presentation, the last go around, was really helpful. You were mentioning earlier in the presentation about embedded like hyperlinks in web pages. And this is a question that we have, we might have particular content and, say, we're trying to direct people to another part of our website, and often we'll just embed the word like, such and such disorder is often associated with anxiety, and then we link to our anxiety page. Sometimes we say things like, to learn more about finding help, see our such and such page. And the question is, were you trying to say that we should be more directional, or is it okay to just embed the hyperlink within a sentence?
If you feel that the sentence is descriptive, then you're doing it. It never hurts to do more, but it sounds like you're hitting a good, reasonable, I don't want to say minimum because that downplays what you're doing. No, for further information on anxiety, further information on, eating disorders. If that phrase is what's linked, then you're doing it.
Okay.
You can always do more.
Sometimes we don't actually, we're not that directional. It's just a sentence that has the word anxiety in it and we hyperlink to it. So we're not directing. Is that okay too? Or is it just preferable to provide that direction?
It doesn't hurt, but if it then makes the reading the reading flow awkward, don't. Keep it simple.
Okay.
So if it's working, and we can certainly, if you want to shoot me a link to a particular page and say, hey, what do you think about this sentence? Happy to look at it. But no, I think you're hitting a good, reasonable minimum.
Okay.
It sounds good.
Okay, thanks. Thank you for your help with that.
Yeah, the more descriptive you can be, the better, but you don't want to also then complicate your sentence, your reading flow either.
Does anybody else have any? I think we have time for one more question, if anyone has. Yes, Mara?
I have, I'm trying to figure out how best to word this. You mentioned that I think it was NVDA is free, it's crowdsourced. Is
Yes.
that, so, I'm very curious. How would you obtain that? Because would we have to go through IT? I just don't understand how we would like test that out.
Let's see.
And if you don't have an answer right now, I can ask you later. I just was kind of circling back to that.
Right, it's a downloadable software.
Okay.
You'd probably have to go through your IT department unless you have admin rights to install software in your computer. Yeah. And then how you would financially support them, I don't know. I mean, I think if I were to ever do it, I would just send them a personal check, honestly.
Okay, I was just curious.
Yeah, you know, you can download a beta version or a demo version of JAWS, but it's for blind people. They don't want people using it to test. They want blind people to test it out in order to encourage their purchasing it. So we shouldn't kind of abuse that from Freedom Scientific. Whereas NVDA just says, hey, take it, use it for everybody. But the link I just tried isn't working. So I'll follow up and double check the link and share that with you.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Yeah, I'm always available. You know, as time permits, I'll meet with anybody by Microsoft Teams or whatever platform you prefer. I like Teams because I like the captioning feature of it that I can run. And it gives a good, clear picture for me. And, you know, whether it's, hey, take a look at this slideshow that I'm working on, or take a look at this Word document and give me some feedback. Always happy to work with Karen and to help you out.
Well, I just want to say thank you. I mean, this is so helpful. I mean, it's like removing the mystery for me anyways. It's just really, you know, and I like your idea of 15 minutes a week, like a tiny chunk that'll go a long way. And I just think that's a fantastic idea because we can all do that while we're eating our lunch or something. So we really appreciate it. Karen, I don't know if you want to say some closing words. I saw you pop up.
I just want to thank all of you for providing such a great questions and images and feedback. And again, I'd like to thank Gary. So thank you.
My pleasure. You know,
We're
I'm
happy
really
to have
always
you as an adjunct to our OSPPC family. So thank you so much.
yes. You know, I live 2 blocks away from your office. I'm available.
Wonderful. Thank you again so much, Gary.
Have a great day.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Take care. Karen, I'll follow up with the PowerPoint slides.
Okay, thank you.